Psychotechnologies Live.
Woo!
Welcome to a totally normal episode of Psychotechnologies Live.
Totally normal. Excellent. That's what I want. I want totally normal episodes.
Totally normal. Nothing exciting above the usual excitement of psychotech.
I mean, we're always exciting, right? You're always exciting to me, so that's like good enough for me.
Yeah, I'm always exciting to you. So like when you see me.
Yeah, I get excited. That's the jab that we got going.
Nice. I just thought you were an excited person.
I am an excited person. And that's probably more about me than about other people, but I am always an exciting person. I don't really know where all my energy comes from. It just kind of appears. Anyway, you were asking me about reading other people.
Yeah. So you've done this multiple times where I'm not making any facial expressions or doing anything. And like I'm doing things in a way where normal people are like, what's going on? Tell me what's happening. Make some facial expression or do something to express what's going on. And you act like I'm being very obvious in what I'm experiencing. And then you relate to like what's going on inside me.
Right. I mean, I've done this for a very long time where I think I'm projecting like onto other people a map of like what I think is going on inside. Like even if you're silent, you're not like dead. Like you're like there's something going on inside. And in that sense, I'm still there's less information. Obviously, if you're completely still, there's less information about what I can predict. But there's also like extra context. Like I am here saying some words in front of you. You're blinking a couple times in response to me saying a couple words. You're nodding your head now. Like there's some information, even though you haven't said anything, about whether you agree or disagree, or whether I'm like saying some contentious stuff. Like I can also imply your internal movements based on like, am I saying a contentious thing and is he agreeing, or am I saying a contentious thing and is he like, I don't know, like leaning in, leaning out. There's a lot of little signals, but like as I described that, it's almost like I'm doing this in an explicit way, and I'm not. It's more like I'm doing this in an automatic, implicit way, that I am doing the reading that I am doing. Mm-hmm. So, like I have one question that I think nowadays I just ask on autopilot, which is, I've said it to you. It's something like if I was you, that person, if I was that person being that person in this moment, what would I be thinking or feeling? And what would be going on for me? Right? Does that make sense?
It doesn't not make sense, but I wouldn't say that I understand it.
Right.
Like, what does that mean? I don't get it exactly. Like, I thought I was like empathetic and understanding people, and like seeing the way you interact. It's like, okay, I'm missing. I'm definitely missing some pieces.
Like, let me just, how do I explain that? What am I doing? I don't know. I'd like cautiously say I'm just seeing what's going on or something. Like,
yeah, I get that from your inside, from like the inside of your perspective and your experience. Like you're just seeing what's happening, and you're like, yeah, this is what's going on. So this is what's happening.
I mean, it's like I'll have this thing that happens to me occasionally where I'll have a guest in my house and they'll like wander to the kitchen and I'll be like, oh, they're looking for a glass so they can get a glass of water. And I'll say, it's in the cupboard next to the sink, up high next to the sink, because that's where happens to be. Glasses are nearly always in the cupboard up high next to the sink. But that's okay. The fact is that I have guessed what they're doing, guess what they're looking for, guess correctly, and then told them where to find it before they've even asked.
Yeah.
And I'll do that often.
Yeah. So okay, so like that, like okay, now we're moving into more like territory where it's like you're seeing somebody do something and you're like, oh, I know what you're trying to do. Like
Yeah.
I know what the missing, like what the crux is to move you on to the next.
Yeah. The next thing or the next what they're looking for without them asking. But there's like there's so many more things. It's like someone's where is the bathroom? Someone's looking for an elastic band to be able to close a packet or something. And I will see them go to like wind up the packet and like go get an elastic band and hand it to them because they're like, it's obvious to me that that's like, they haven't asked, they haven't said, they haven't even realized that they're about to need the elastic band necessarily. And I've seen that coming in a natural predictive way. I mean, maybe I'm just living through the people around me as well. Like their experience is so much my experience that I'm like, oh, this person needs one of those. Makes me a good host, at least.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like in the right place to like help. Well, it's also so there's something going on here where I'm gonna be like boundaries, right? Particularly with boundaries, particularly like if you imagine like a Venn diagram, the two circles intersecting, right? I have my experience is one of those circles, your experience is another one of those circles. And then we have this intersecting region where I can see some of what's happening for you because I can, like, you're on video for me, and you can see some of what's happening for me because I'm on video for you. So we've kind of got the shared space in the middle, but we've also got potentially an entire world going on that isn't in the shared space. And it depends on how much self-awareness you have and how much spare attention you have as to how much can be going on for you separate to what's going on for me. So then I'm always modeling people as the kind of the Venn diagram. And then I know what I know what's in my territory, I know what I can see, and then I'm guessing what's in your territory. And then I have a few key rules. I have like everyone's the hero of their own story. No one's deliberately doing evil. Very, very, very rarely, and even so, there's probably like a good, like just one or two steps below that. And so I'm like, what would cause the middle of the Venn diagram to look like this? What would the interior of Daniel have to be for the middle of the Venn diagram to look like this? For me to model it if Daniel's the hero of his own story. And suddenly I have like a bit more potential information. And then I've got like all of my experience of all people ever that I can like sort of map on people kind of do this when, and I kind of do this when, that I can also add to the equation. Like,
so it's like you're like psychic, and like this is how you develop your psychic powers.
Yeah, there was a lot of guessing and checking along the way. Like, I think this is going on. Let me ask a question and see how they react. And it's not like, let me ask a question, and if they say no, then that's not what was going on. It's let me ask a question, and depending on how they react, I will decide if that was accurate or inaccurate. And then like someone could say no defensively, right? They're like, no, that wasn't really good. So I still have to decide whether I agree with their answer. And, there's more information in the fact that someone's being defensive than in the fact that they're saying no, because if they're being defensive, then I'm not their friend right now. So I need to be extra kind to them. I need to work it out. I need to make peace with them.
Yeah.
I need to, like, reward them for being honest about the fact that they didn't agree,
Yeah. So you're constructing the whole reality almost, and then making predictions, I guess.
Yeah.
And testing them, and then over time that develops intuition.
Yep, definitely a lot of testing, and like have to be gentle with testing, because I don't want to go up to a stranger and be like, fatherlessness trauma. Like, yeah. No, I don't want to do that, because that's not going to land well. Even if it's correct, it's not going to land well.
Especially if it's correct.
Yeah. Well, someone might be like, wow, you blew my mind. You could totally pick me. And someone else might be like, how dare you, even if it's true.
Yeah. I do struggle with that a lot of like, how deep am I allowed to go?
Right. See, I would say there's a safety thing there. Like, if I feel safe enough, and it's like me watching my own safety, right? If I feel safe enough to go deep enough and say such a thing, that means that the other person is safe enough to hear it or to have me reveal it. But that's like my safety is also well calibrated.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because I've had that in the past where like I just say things and I'm like, oh, here, this is what it is. And then like it's like, well, that was actually like a super deep, trauma that was like a secret, and I just didn't realize.
No, there's a huge thing here of like calibration and calibration of intuition and calibration of what's okay to say. Calibration is a really, really big topic.
Yeah.
And then like one of my favorites is like when I don't like someone, right? And then I try to apply my intuition to them. It'll come up with like stupid judgments. Like they're only doing that because they're a doo-doo head. I'm like, oh, okay. That's not accurate about the world around me. My ability to intuit them is blocked by my judgment of them. I need to like make peace with myself, sort it out, be compassionate towards them before I can see like, oh, they're only doing that because they are suffering with something else. And so they can't engage with me healthily because they're themselves suffering or something. Okay. That's more like a compassionate thing. And that's more likely to be true than they're only doing that because they're a doo-doo head. So calibration's big. The like where I'm at is very big. Like if I'm in a judgmental place, if I don't like someone, I'm likely to add more trouble to trouble. Yeah. But then there's also like that Venn diagram, right? There's an implied is like my area only covers this much, this territory and that much of the overlap. But actually we can all do this thing where we can like lean into the other Venn diagram bubble and like propose like, I think this is going on for you, right? And like I can say, I think Daniel's distracted right now, and
I'm distracted. And I can tell you,
no, I wasn't. Or he could be like, yeah, I was. Or he could be any number of answers. But it comes from my leaning into his territory and like trying to let me just put a box around what's going on for you. Like, let me define your territory that he can say yes or no.
Yeah.
So there's something of like, I've been through a long journey of getting clear on self and other, on that Venn diagram thing, and what is it okay, what is actually mine and what is not mine, and what is like I'm projecting on him things that are not entirely true at all, and I'm projecting on him things that are true. So I've built that thing, and then I've become very well calibrated with it, and that makes it possible to read people. Particularly like, let's say I look at Daniel and he looks like he's got not much going on inside. Right? That doesn't mean there's nothing going on inside. That means he's having an experience maybe of blankness or of numbness or of distraction.
Yeah, or of emptiness.
Emptiness, right. All of these things are interesting things and could be there for many reasons. If I were to stop on the like, look, you're looking pretty empty today, then I would be missing the like the why and the what about it, and like, is this a problem or is it he just like having a clear, spacious time? So there's a layer there of the like, okay, I'm seeing it, but what do I do with it?
Yeah.
What about it?
Yeah. I do find like at the beginning, I know for me, like when I first was like become more in tune, like if I see something, I would like immediately try to like do something about it. And not everything needs to be done. Like it's okay to to just sit with things.
Right. Particularly like sometimes now's not a good time. Sometimes people don't want to be called out on their shit for whatever reason. They're not in a place where calling them out on their shit is the kind of thing to do. I mix in a lot of circles of like people doing growth stuff and people doing self-reflective stuff, and so they're often like up for it. But most of the
I like those circles because I feel like there's a lot more leeway and things to do.
Yeah. But there's
And
also, I find it feels like a lot more freedom to like try things, be with people, get things wrong without being judged heavily. Like make mistakes and then be like, I tried, that's okay. As opposed to like, oh no, we can't say anything because that's not socially okay.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah. Oh my God. I hate those conversations. You ever get in those conversations where like nothing interesting is socially acceptable?
yes.
Where it's like,
Have I ever shown you the 4 fields of conversation?
think
The
so.
four,
It sounds kind of familiar.
I think we did. We talked about it on a previous stream. Google says it's Otto Scharmer's fields of the generative dialogue. Here,
What are the keywords?
let me just pull it up for you here. 2 seconds. Behold, 4 fields of generative dialogue. 4 fields.
Oh
Of,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, we did those.
so that's you're talking about the talking nice territory, right? Like that's the boring one where no one's saying anything and it's boring. And then there's you got to go through the like talking tough
No,
one.
but that's the thing. No.
They're like,
Yeah, but sometimes they do that, but it's like they're not being polite. Like they're like ribbing each other, but not.
right. Well, that's the talking tough one, right?
But like, I don't know.
This is the arrow. Like we start in the talking nice, and then someone gets annoyed and goes to talking tough, and then like often we dance between 1 and 2. We get really sick of it. But the reflective one is the really powerful. Like, oh, I'm just noticing how uncomfortable I am in this boring conversation. That's a bit talking tough as well. But in order to get to generative, we got to like travel from talking nice through talking tough through reflective to get to generative. I've found that just making a reflective comment is usually a good start for generative, or like just trying to be generative is like just
Yeah,
fly through it.
I find some people are very okay. So here's one that where we can kind of merge this. Sometimes people are very like, oh, I would be happy to have an interesting conversation, but I'm going to not let the conversation go anywhere where there's feeling because I'm afraid of everybody else feeling discomfort. And like kind of everybody starts to do that and they're never able to like communicate that.
Right. So the key is to just be uncomfortable yourself. Like for example, I'm getting bored, right? The key is like to be explicit, be able to be overt and be like, hey, out loud, I am bored. And then like that breaks the social norms because I've declared that I'm having a bad time here. Like I'm not pretending I'm having a good time. I've actually declared I'm having a bad time.
Yeah. I do find like I have done that. So sometimes it does yeah, so I have started like noticing when I'm uncomfortable and being able to share that because then it's like they're trying to make everyone feel comfortable at my expense.
Right.
And therefore now they're making me feel uncomfortable. And like that's a hard one for me because I'm not the kind of person to really like call people out on making me feel uncomfortable. Because like mostly I don't care.
Yeah. So I think one of the things I keep track of when reading people is what other people are paying attention to. And that starts with the explicit, like if there's a noise over there and everyone's head turns to look over there, I noticed that everyone just got distracted. Like everyone's thought streams, everyone's experience just got interrupted by that loud noise. But then it even goes back to when everyone comes back, are they back or are they not back? Like, are they still in that thought of like, I wonder what that noise was? Like, oh, that reminds me of another loud noise I learned. Like I'm in a memory. I'm in a different time and place. Or am I actually back when I'm back? So I'm paying attention to that. And for when it comes to interpersonal work, often really important things are happening in the other place. Like when people are recovering a memory and reprocessing it, that can be a really important thing in a therapeutic context. So
I enjoy that when I catch it. Like sometimes I don't catch it and then I think we're here and we're there. But if I notice that they're not here, they're there. And it is like often like if like traumatic experience or something or like something formative, really it's like I like to call it formative. Like there's people have formative moments. And that's formative is always interesting, I think. I don't know for sure, but I'm pretty sure it's my theory. It's
So-
like definitionally interesting.
So I think when I started, it was more like I would keep track of if the conversation had breaks or not, like if someone was talking or not, and that was an invitation to like I can now say things because no one else is currently saying things in the conversation. This is obviously beginning, like normal social convention. We talk when other people aren't talking, and we try not to interrupt too much. And sometimes we do interrupt, but actually that's not enough. And what I do now is I notice what other people are paying attention to, and I choose whether to talk depending on whether they're thinking about it. Like I try not to interrupt other people's thought streams either, because otherwise, they're having an experience where I'm saying a thing and their thought stream is interrupted, and they have to juggle both.
Yeah.
And whereas if I like give it another moment for that thought stream to end, then they can pay attention so much better.
Yeah.
So we can get further, or maybe that was an important thought. Maybe they're about to say something really insightful.
Yeah. At least when people don't chain them. Sometimes people will just chain them because they like the attention.
Right. But there's like, I'd call it like a cautiously an entrainment thing, that what I want from the people around me is that I want their thought processes to not interrupt my conversation if they're not relevant.
Yeah.
So that means that I need to have respect for a thought process that's happening, and I need to let it finish. And then I need to, once it's finished, I will talk. But it's like, I'm not just in the room with you, I'm in the room with you and all your parts and thought processes. And so if I interrupt all your parts and thought processes, they're not going to get along with me very well. They're going to interrupt me later. Which is interesting because I don't think I've ever said that out loud. That's what I'm doing. But that's what it feels like.
And then I guess then you watching them is developing insight into them. And that's what allows you to be.
I would love to get better at my intuition. Unfortunately, it's a hard thing to train. But I'd love to be able to read people even.
You want to get better. You're already really good.
It feels like this skill can deepen like 100 times. Particularly when it comes to working with people or wanting to work with people. The more I can trust people, the deeper, the further I can expect something to happen, and it'll happen. Like if I'm like, Daniel, send me that email by Friday, and I'm like, I trust Daniel because he's consistently sent emails before. I know that he's not going to forget. Like, or if I'm like, I don't know Daniel, I don't know if I can trust him. This is I've asked a thing and he's about to disappoint me. Like, I'm living in a very different world in terms of conducting business, in terms of getting to where I want to go in life. Like, imagine if you were in a business corporate environment, and when you asked something to be done, it got done with like 100% certainty. Like, you got to be careful then, because people will like, if you get your ability that high, then you have to be careful what you wish for.
Yeah.
But assuming you are also being careful what you wish for, like you can get shit done like no one else if people just do what you say. In the right, and I don't mean like mindless drones. I mean like intelligent people. Autonomous, intelligent people doing what you say because it's a good idea every time you tell them to do it.
Yeah. That started to happen to me a little bit. And it's kind of freaky.
As in like people trust you and do what you say because they think it's a good idea.
Yeah. Like I've been like telling people to do stuff and then they do it. And then I get confused. Yeah, and then I feel like, and then they do it, and I'm like, oh yeah, I want you to be autonomous and do it yourself and all that. And then we were just talking about this earlier, and then I end up in a position they're like doing it and everything's fine. And then I'm like, this is weird.
Why is it working? Why is it working? Yeah. I have room to grow in the direction of trusting people more, and letting them like the way in which I currently survive in the world is by feeling like I'm in control of everything, and that makes me very safe and comfortable. And so attempting to let go of some of that in such a way of let the world do what it's going to do, and I'll respond to it as it does, is it takes work. But it's also very relaxing to be able to let go, if I can. But yeah, reading people, it really helps with feeling like I'm in control.
Yeah.
There's a line that I will say from time to time, which is that I trust people to do what I expect them to do.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a complex kind of trust, because it's not an other trust, it's a self-trust. I trust myself to be able to predict what they're going to do enough that I can work with them. And sometimes that means I trust myself to predict what they're going to do enough that I won't work with this person.
Yeah. I was having this conversation actually with my wife, and this moved into faith, where like you trust someone, like she always says, and this is like a very psychology thing, that the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior.
Yeah. Or current. Or current behavior.
Yeah, or current behavior. And then like past that is this other thing, like you trust them in the ways that you predict that they're going to act. And then there's like this like more like other way of trust, which is like almost faith, where you like you trust them to do unknown unknowns well, or let's say have your interest in mind, or something like that. For the things that you can't predict, that are just, I don't know what's going to happen, and it's just chaos or beyond human comprehension, or at least beyond my comprehension, right? And to me, that was like, I really like that as like kind of like the definition of faith, of like unknown unknowns. Like what are you projecting on that?
Yeah, it's rare that I will encounter someone that acts in entirely unpredictable ways. Although people have like a big social norm thing and societal thing where we act in these ways because we're humans in society.
Right.
So
it's never
many people within societal structures.
Yeah, it is rare that it's like completely an unknown. There's usually, like, especially if you've got some projection, but I think that does kind of like amplify how you relate to the people. Right? Like if it's like an unknown situation and you're like panicking, or like don't let that guy near it, then you don't trust them. But if it's, or you don't trust reality, which is another one, like you might not trust the world.
Right. So there's something really interesting that I think I end up doing because I'm reading people so much, and that is that I can guide them places. Like everyone wants to have insights. Everyone wants to have profound experiences. Everyone wants to go, aha, I get it. And in that sense, I'm a little bit closer to delivering people insightful experiences because I can see what they're thinking, kind of. Not like quite literally, like this is the thought you are having, but I sort of see the shape of people's attention.
Yeah.
So if they're thinking about something interesting, I'm like, oh, give that space, let that happen.
So you can see what it is.
And if they're like distracted by a thing, I'll be like, let's not go there. You know, I've seen it. I saw a guy who was running a workshop, and he gave a 2-minute rant on whichever topic he like dived into, and then he looked around the room and he was like, a bunch of you have dropped into like, I'm your abusive father, so we're gonna have to drop all that and we're going somewhere else. But he just like out loud, completely like that, he said that, and there's a couple of people who are like dazed and like you know, you can name that because he was good at reading people as well.
Yeah, I do find like both for me and other people, if it's like too on point, you start to lose like coherence. Everything starts to become dreamlike a little bit.
What do you mean by dreamlike? I'm interested in this.
Like I have this guy where like where like I get him, but he doesn't think I get him. And so like I walk him through insights, but like in a way that he thinks he's coming up with all the insights.
Right.
and like he just like it just starts like he just loses his body, and he starts to like just like be high but like centered in a way. And I think you've done that to me as well, where you're like walking through and I'm like it's like sort of like thought patterns that I already have, but then they go in loops, and then you're doing it in a way that's maybe not a loop or a bigger loop. And so I wind up in this like space of like everythingness or potential or something.
So there's some let me see how well I can navigate to this one. There's some like topic that I'm particularly interested in that is something in the territory of like pre-episodic memory. So memories that happen before we could remember, like chronologically very easily. So sort of before we were 4, probably. And maybe even earlier than that, like before we were 2. We have these big sweeping experiences, like everything is bad or everything is good or everything is scary or everything is confusing. And then occasionally I'll be working with an adult and they'll drop into one of these and they'll be like, it's probably what you would describe as maybe lost. Like suddenly you'll be just floating and lost. And if you could put words to it, you would probably end up saying, yeah, everything is kind of big and I don't understand anything of what's going on right now and kind of floaty, and you'll be in that for a while. And the hard thing about these states is that from the inside, it's kind of weird to navigate and hard to navigate because it's like there isn't much language and it's just this big, vast experience. From the outside, having done it myself, I'm like, oh, you're in that one. Like, that's fine. Just hang out there as long as you need. And you'll float around and gradually you'll be there. And then you'll come back down to the ground and you'll find your body again. You'll be like, but these like vast pre-episodic experiences, people are fairly uncomfortable with them because they take us from like the world in which we understand really well. They're like, I'm grasping very well. I know my rational self, to the like, I don't know anything. But if we can get through them, then we can practice getting through them and get to a place on the other side of like free, spacious, open kind of fun. Like creativity often comes from those open places.
Yeah. It's free and it's lost at the same time.
But also, like, the thing about lost is it's in direct opposition to found, right? It's a polarity. And so if you want to find something new, like, yourself very well and you're familiar with your own experience and these are all the things and what you know about the world. If you want to find something new about the world, you need to get lost because you know it too.
Yeah.
So you need to be okay going to lost. You need to somehow find a way there, find a way to lost. And then you need to be okay being lost for a bit in order to find a new perspective on reality. I'm like, this is what's really going on. And so the habitual person of only living in the known cannot find new perspective as easily than the person who's like, can get lost and go like, I don't know what's going on. And then turn around and be like, oh, this is going on.
Yeah. Like for me, actually, it's interesting that we're in this space. I'm feeling like I'm in a lost space a little bit now. Space, but for me, I kind of orient towards this space like this is a like this is its own location.
Right. Now that you've been here a bunch of times, you kind of start to know it.
Yeah. And so like it's like, oh, I'm lost and I haven't found the thing and all that, but like I'm found because I know where I am. I'm lost.
Right.
And I know like logically that doesn't necessarily make sense, but to flip it around and to do it like in a logical way, like sometimes you get lost and you don't know you're lost.
You're like,
and then
why am I really confused? Why is this not going anywhere? Why is it not working?
Yeah.
Like a lost, I might not know that I'm lost.
Yeah, and then you realize you're lost.
And then you're like, oh, I'm just lost. That's my problem.
Yeah. And once you're lost, it's like, okay, well, you know, maybe it sucks depending on like what's going on or where you are, right? Like if you're in like the mountains or something, yeah, that's, you know, that's potentially dangerous.
Or maybe I'm in the middle of a project and I don't know what I'm doing next, and like being lost is the worst thing because I just want to know what I'm doing next so I can do it.
Yeah,
but
cool
actually, lost is a really important experience.
Yeah, and like, you know, it might suck to be lost, but at least you know you're lost and you can deal with it.
Right. Yeah.
And then, yeah. So for me, I often like when I'm realize I'm in the space, I'm like, oh, what am I supposed to be doing? And like, doesn't matter. It often just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And just like hanging out, being lost.
Well, like, you know, once I'm lost, maybe I'll go for a walk, and then maybe I'll like come up with a few new ideas, and then I'll like be able to piece it together. But I got lost for a reason, because I needed to go there for whatever reason.
That feeling.
Yeah. It's a nice feeling.
My pre-orientation, I think you're saying. And it's interesting because you do go towards pre-orientation like pre-4 or whatever. Like I'm not really on board this train of like pre-episodic memories in that way. But I do really very much believe and see that people like they go through stages before they tackle a thing, and like you'll come in with attitudes, or you kind of do all this internal ineffable things before you even orient towards a problem. And I think those are really key towards like the success of whatever you're doing. You know, like content, it's like the context in which you're engaging with. And
right. So for example, if I'm trying to teach someone a particular type of meditation and they've just gone into lost territory, I'm like, oh, the instructions for meditation are not about to go in because this person's too lost. Like, okay, we've got to go through that one before they're back on the ground and able to follow instruction.
Right. And that's with lost. But let's say they're coming in like, okay, prove it to me. Let's go. All right. Like, you're gonna be like, no, like you're already in a place where
you can't get there from here. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I can prove it in general, but like, you know, you need to have like the right attitude coming in.
And someone recently described it as like something like, I can do pretty impressive magical things, but it really depends on the causes and conditions of the experience. Is it just what magical things I can do?
Right.
Like, you know, I can here's some magical things I can do. I can cure people's headaches. I can like solve some occasional postural or like long-term body problems. I can fix acid reflux from time to time, depending on the person. If I'm in the right context, I can just like almost like wave a magic wand and like be gone magically. It's a little bit more than that, but if someone's like, I've had acid reflux for 20 years and no one's ever fixed it, I'm not going to be able to be like, wave my magic wand and fix it. I'm going to be like, okay, we're in a place where we can't get there from here yet. We need to like build trust, wonder about the possibility, like open up the potential. Like maybe there is something you haven't tried yet. Would you be interested in trying it? Like it's got to start there, which is obviously uncomfortable territory for anyone who has tried a lot of things.
Yeah.
Like we might need to go there in order to make progress. And it's not a charlatan move. It's a like genuinely we might need to not know what's going to happen in order to like enable it to happen.
Yeah, I find that so much with conversations and stuff. Like I used to always know what was going to happen and then couldn't do anything about it. And then I realized like a lot of same-sidedness is the discovering it together, like co-creative.
Well, for me, there's like a surrendering to the experience. So
yeah,
I don't overtly go around being like, your acid reflux, I can solve that today. That's not my tagline. It's like, hey, maybe I can help. That's a tagline that I can get behind, that because maybe I can, and more often than not it has been yes, but
yeah, so this is actually super interesting, because now I feel like we're in a place that I really want to talk about, that I have trouble talking. But your tagline of like the thing you're calling tagline is I'm gonna help you, right? And so that kind of creates like a split. So you're gonna get some people who are like, I don't want to be helped,
right?
And you're gonna be your response is, good that you told me that, because I can't help you.
Yeah.
And some people are like, okay, I'm willing to try this and see where it goes. And you're like, good, because I can help you.
Right.
You've created this division almost.
Well, that's why I like the phrase maybe I can help, because maybe I can help still, like, you know, if someone doesn't want help, then maybe I can help doesn't actually bother them.
Yeah.
Yeah. As opposed to like, I can help without the maybe there.
Yeah, maybe I can help, right? And then like, yeah, sorry, that maybe. Yeah, you're right. This is your spell, right?
Right.
Where it's
multiple spells.
Willing to take that chance on the maybe, then like there's high chance that you can help them. Right. And if someone's not willing to take that maybe I can help you, then there's a high chance that you can't help them.
Yeah.
And this is like, it's weird. It's kind of like a spell or whatever. Like, I don't know, what do you call it? I'm just in this magic mindset, so I'm using that
like
framework.
I don't mind the magic language. I know it turns some people off, but I have no problem with the magic language. When you say that's a spell, I'm like, oh yeah, it's a spell.
Divisive, probably not a good word.
Well, that's there's this idea of code switching, which goes back to the rationalists.
Talk about code. No, code switching is more than just rationalists.
Well, it started it. Rationalists had like a different version. They had like a jargon or something.
This is very much used in like minority or Black culture. And
yeah, right. Well, like different cultures and different societies have different language, different words that they use to code for their experience.
Yeah.
And particularly, I mean, I mentioned the rationalists for a moment because there are codes that they really get uncomfortable with, particularly around the meditative, religious, mystical, spiritual language. And so they don't have access to insights and information and being able to change their experience through those pathways because they're too uncomfortable with the codes. And I had that for a while until I got more comfortable and more willing to experiment with the codes until I worked out, oh, this is just code for strange sensations. Or like there are sensations in the mind that we don't have good words for, and the mystical language actually fits them better. And so great, I guess I'm just using this language now. But there was a period where I'm like, that's weird, I'm not going there because they're talking funny.
Let's talk about code switching. Code switching is just like, oh my God, like I used to do it all the time, like without realizing it. And I realized like people, like a lot of people just didn't trust me because they would see me act one way and then they would see me act a different way. Do you think that like, no, I'm the same person?
Do you think that's connected to your language problems, your dyslexias? That you're like, code is just code and I'll use whichever one I feel like moment to moment?
Yeah, I think it's more the conceptual stuff, actually. I think it's my strengths because I understand it. Like they're different languages, and some concepts are easier to explain in certain languages than others. And so like and then also whoever I'm talking to, right? So if I'm talking to someone, like I'm usually using, like we have to use the code that's in common, right? Unless one of us is willing to learn learn the new one.
So
So
I find myself a translator. I often change to the other person's code.
yeah.
So I try and speak as universal or generic code as possible until, like, I wouldn't have brought up the magic code unless you did. And now
That
that
is
you
what I'm trying to learn. That's why I bring it up. Because
now that you brought it up, I can speak in it. But until you had named it, I really don't necessarily have those words to describe it.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm very cautious with which code that I'm using.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I brought up the magic because I code switched to that because I thought that it would be actually easier to understand.
Right.
I think the magic language kind of does it here
Does
really
it
well.
shortcut? Yeah.
Because you're essentially, this is like my theory on it, is you're when you do this, you're dealing with, like, when you do these things, you're dealing with things that are literally beyond human comprehension. Right. You're like, and so you have to
maybe it's worth saying beyond concrete comprehension. Like, it's subtle or very subtle. Like, there is some comprehensibility, but
I think it's literally beyond human comprehension. I think you don't understand what you're doing when you first come. You don't know where it's going to go. You just have feelings.
That's true. Well, feeling comprehension. Maybe it's not like logical comprehension, but it's feeling comprehension.
Comprehend your feelings, but your feelings are like handles on larger things.
Sure, that's true.
That are actually beyond your understanding.
Yeah. Okay.
You're dealing with forces beyond your understanding.
Potentially.
And I mean that literally.
All right, I'll let's go with it.
And that's fucking magic. Come on. or alternatively, it's not magic. It's technology.
It's technology. Yeah, then it looks like magic. Yeah, I'm up for that.
Which is from, like, the science perspective, like, that is kind of the definition of magic, right? It's any technology that's sufficiently advanced is magic.
Yeah.
And so I think the magic language actually works really well.
When I first left, or like stepped out of the rationality culture into the, like, post-rationality culture, one of the things I found was that people who moved towards post-rationality moved in, like, every direction. Like, people moved towards meditation, towards yoga, towards mental health, towards therapy, towards different towards, like, occultism, towards different directions within post-rationality, and, like, everyone just stepped into the fog in their own way. But the really exciting part was that I could kind of understand what they were saying, even if they were using a different code, and they could understand what I was saying if I was using a different code. We could just kind of, like, get each other, like, we were all moved beyond the, like, purely rational framework,
beyond the language, beyond the words,
beyond the rational language, into the, like, weird language, but we were doing it in different ways, and we were able to communicate with each other.
Yeah, I think just to, like, kind of riff and, like, a little bit different. I think the trick to becoming a really good code switcher is that you're not engaged with the code. You're engaged with the thing that the code is trying to say.
Right.
You're engaged with the real world, and you're really trying to do things, and you're trying to understand the world, and then everything else just becomes, like, you just have to learn the names of things.
Right. Well, so interestingly, I remember when I first made the leap into post-rational territory, my poor rational friends couldn't really understand what I was going on about, because I was so, like, speaking in extremes and everythings, but you know who did understand me was the hippies.
Right.
They're like,
right.
Well, not that the hippies are right, but they were accepting. They were like, oh, interesting, you're saying that like that, okay. And they just went with it. And I was like, it's nice to be understood, even though I'm, I have some signal here saying that I'm completely gibberish. It's nice to have some nice signal over here that's saying, like, yep, we're fine. We can still follow along with you, even though you're using slightly weirder language. And that was very helpful to help me reground. And so I can both, at this point, I'd like to think I can both point to the weirdness with and stay in the rational. Like, I can do both. Obviously, at some point, like we said, there is no rational language to describe the magical thing, and so I have to use the magical language. But
Yeah.
Most
Oh,
part,
oh,
and
so
trying to
this
be
is
quite
this is
literal.
where
What,
yeah, this is
what
where
I'm
non
describing.
sequiturs come in. I
Yeah.
find for the rational language, if you because you can still speak rational and then just non sequitur things, and that's how you get places.
Right. You can just.
And then when people call me out on it, I'm like, well, would you rather be doing this or that? Right? Like it's your choice. Like I did non sequitur and you called me out on it, and we can go back to the first one if you want, but I think this one's more salient.
Hmm.
Right. And then they're in this place where they're struggling with their internal like wants and desires. And then you've transcended the rational and you've moved into, I guess, like the pre-rational is really technically, but that's a post-rational if you're talking about it.
Well, it's both. We kind of, maybe I'd say there's a movement from like purely known networks, like this is what I know, this is my knowledge area, to the like less well known, and so that's both moving beyond and moving before at the same time, hopefully moving to a more fullness of being. Yes, we're in the rational right now. I'm sending you language when I say words, and at the same time I want to be present to the pre-rational that came before and the post-rational that comes after are both floating with me as I'm trying to describe them and like orient still from the rational, but like through those other spaces that are nearby, but present to them, hopefully. No, I lost him. He's gone.
No, I'm in the lost space. I'm in the lost space.
Right.
I'm not gone. I'm in the lost space. Let me reflect back. So you get like the rational, and then you get like the pre-rational, post-rational, and those things are like, like there's a way they're connected. Like they're connected in the sense that if you're gonna go through rationality somewhere, like you got to know where you got to like pay attention to where you're going, and then rational, and then post, because that affects like the rational dimension.
Well, we'd also like to take the pre or post rational and make it more rational. We'd like to bring it into understood. Like we'd like to document it, and we'd like to share it with others, and we'd like to make
I think that relation
things possible.
Yeah, I think with rationality is a lot of that relation. So for me, it's like not necessarily making, because like the pre-rational meaning like needs or wants or whatever, like you're not like I don't, at least I generally don't go that direction of like rational to needs, because I find it like your needs are your needs, like that's not rational, that just is. But then like seeing what that beginning is and seeing what that end is, and then the relationship between the two having to be rational. So you have needs, you're going to do stuff, and then your conclusion is going to be something that meets those needs. That middle piece needs to be rational, or you're kind of
consciousness needs some rational territory to stand on, otherwise you feel like you're going mad.
Well, you are going mad, right? Yeah. Like if you have needs and then the way you're going about meeting those needs is not rational,
right? It's impulsive, doing things. Yeah. Yep, that's true.
And that doesn't mean that you have to be like, I think like that doesn't mean that you need full meta awareness all the time of your rational state and be able to like prove everything, and like I think people do go overboard with that, but like in general, yeah, you need to be rational when you're doing stuff, or it's not going to work. Heuristics only take you so far. Psychotechnologies.